How do you develop faith in enlightenment? What seems to me, of course, through coming, through attending classes, through studying, through reading, contemplating, discussing, and practicing. But all of this hinges upon, at least what works for me in a very practical way, faith in my own Buddha nature. Faith in my own potential for enlightenment makes it very easy for me to then develop faith in enlightenment. Whereas if I'm looking at the concept of enlightenment while grasping strongly at my own limited self-perception, right? How I view myself at the moment. I look at myself, I'm like an ordinary person, I have delusions, I get up, I get upset, I go up, I go down, I sometimes feel hurt, I sometimes feel insecure, and I grasp at that. And I think, well, this is reality. And I look around at everybody else and they seem pretty messed up too. So we're all like walking around, grasping at ourselves in a very ordinary way. And then somebody comes along and says, oh, there are enlightened beings. And, there's a Buddha of loving kindness in a golden body, lives in a complete pure land where everyone is just pervaded by love and joy and bliss and eternal peace and things like that. And we're like, I've heard that before. Tell me another one, that sounds like a total fantasy, a nice fantasy. But we actually these days, we sort of think, well, that's just us projecting that, fantasizing about that because we can't stand the reality of where we're at the moment. We can't face up to the hard truth that it's all absurd and meaningless and we're completely, just rambling around temporarily in a massive void that's all going to just vanish someday. Something like that. So that's why it's so important, we actually do the meditations whereby we get to observe our own mind, like we just did, and allow just naturally that settling process to happen. And gradually we'll get better and better at it, by the way. We'll get better and better at it. The more that you do that simple meditation we just did, the more you'll begin to access the natural, peaceful clarity of your own mind. You can already do it to a certain extent, and it's just going to get better and better. Like all of us know that when we basically shut up a little bit inside, a mind of peace arises. We all know that. If you've been coming here for just a little while, you know that. It's like, yeah, I've accessed a little bit of peace. I don't get there every time, but I have accessed a little peace. And how did I do it? I shut up, right? I just stopped going blah, blah, blah. I stopped agitating the mind, and then a peaceful experience arose. And when I allowed myself to then focus on that peaceful experience, it expanded. And I'm beginning to get a sense of the fact that there is this dimension of the mind, and because it's not physical, it has no boundary, which basically means that if I really get into that space, because it has no boundary, there's no boundary to my peace. There's no boundary to my joy. There's no boundary to my love. There's no boundary to my compassion. And all of this is, in a sense, analytical, but it's very experiential, isn't it? It's very experiential. And you start beginning to identify with your potential for limitless peace and joy and compassion and love. I mean, we do this every time you come here, isn't it? Every time. Identify with that. Identify with that. Stop identifying with whoever you are identifying with before you came in here. Because that's what we do, isn't it? We flip right back and start going, oh, that was really nice, that little journey to the peaceful land. But guess what? I'm messed up. My parents did this, my siblings did that, the teachers did this, I was told this, I was told that. That's who I really am. I'm stuck, I'm trapped, blah, blah, blah. And we however we perceive ourselves, we think that's our reality. But every time you come in here, we chip away. We chip away at that ignorant misapprehension of who you think you are. Completely superficial, completely mistaken. Geshe Kelsang says, hallucination. The self that you normally perceive is a hallucination. It doesn't actually exist. And we meditate on that again and again and again and again and again. And gradually what happens is you begin to believe in your own potential. I think this is a wonderful way for, Western skeptics to find their way into beginning to acknowledge enlightenment exists. There's a complete alternative way of being, and I'm accessing it. I'm beginning to experience it in my own mind. And of course, if I can experience a little bit of peace through these methods, I can experience more peace if I keep applying those methods. And suddenly you begin to open yourself up to the knowledge that Buddhas exist. And that's an extraordinary thing. That's an extraordinary thing, to come to that acknowledgement in your own mind. But you're not doing it as a leap of faith. You're doing it on the basis of having built up, step by step, a logical analysis, or logical reasons, basically indicating the existence of enlightenment that is founded upon your own growing experience in your own mind. And then you couple that with the fact that literally generation upon generation of people like you and me have gone through the same practices, same motions, and have come to the same conclusions, and have then on that basis accomplished extraordinary things, which you can, read about in the biographies of the great spiritual practitioners of the past. And you can see, living examples such as Venerable Geshe Kelsang. So you start developing faith. Faith is an interesting word, I think, in the West, because faith in the West often implies faith in something that is irrational, that has no logical basis. It implies a leap. In Buddhism, faith absolutely just implies trusting something that you've worked out to be true. Faith is conjoined with reason in Buddhism. It's even conjoined with doubt, because you need the doubting mind to help you go further into your faith. We're not afraid of doubt, as long as we use the doubt to ask the right questions. That's going to allow us to pursue deeper. But at some point, right, you're going to want to set sail. Like you can study about sailing. You can work it all out, the wind, the sails, where you need to put the sails and so forth like that. At some point, you're going to have to go sailing. At some point, you're going to have to entrust yourself to the boat and to the wind and the sail. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the act of faith, isn't it? When you actually get in the boat. And at some point, and we all do this at different levels, but at some point you're just going to want to just go with it. Because of course you're not going to be seeing Buddhas with your physical eyes at this point in time, because because we're ordinary beings trapped in an ordinary misapprehension of reality. We can't see Buddhas, but we can begin to access the experience of enlightened beings in the way that we just did, through a peaceful heart. So we can begin to tune in to the reality of enlightened beings.